on photosynthesis for GCSE students. The focus of this video precisely is going to be the equation for photosynthesis, and I'm going to try and link this back to plant structure, which is the last topic you should have done before photosynthesis. The vast majority of photosynthesis occurs in the leaf, which hopefully you remember is an example of an organ in a plant. To be precise, the exact part of a leaf where the vast majority of photosynthesis happens is the palisade tissue. Now, the palisade tissue is jammed full of chloroplasts. So chloroplasts are the precise location where photosynthesis occurs. So what is the equation for photosynthesis? It's this: carbon dioxide plus water becomes glucose and oxygen. But really, really importantly, it requires light. Now, hopefully this is fairly obvious. If you leave a plant in a dark room, it's not going to photosynthesize, it's just going to die. Photosynthesis requires light. I've even drawn a little cartoon down here to try and demonstrate how important it is. No light, no photosynthesis. For this reason, photosynthesis is endothermic. Now, you don't need to know the exact meaning of endothermic for GCSE biology, but you do need to know that it is endothermic, and in this context, it means it requires energy from the environment to occur. You know, you can have your carbon dioxide, your water sitting around with your chloroplasts for a really, really long time, and you're not going to get any photosynthesis. It requires the light. So let's look at the reactants. Let's look at the things you need for photosynthesis. First, you've got carbon dioxide. Now, where is carbon dioxide? It's in the air. How does it get into the leaves, where the vast majority of photosynthesis in a plant will happen? Well, it goes through the stomata. The stomata are essentially just holes in the leaf. The stomata are made by guard cells, which are either turgid or flaccid, and can open and close the stomata. Now, why does a plant want to open and close the stomata? Because when it's open, CO2 from the air is going to go in, and that's good, right? That's good photosynthesis. As you can see here, we want carbon dioxide inside the leaf for photosynthesis. That's great. However, not so great is that when the stomata are open, the plant loses H2O. The plant loses water. That's not ideal. We call that transpiration. Transpiration is bad. We don't want the plant to be losing its water through the stomata. We want the plant to be using its water for photosynthesis. So what are the products of photosynthesis? Well, the big one, the important one for the plant, is the glucose, the sugar, their energy source. We'll see later in future videos that glucose can be made into loads of different stuff. There's loads of uses for the glucose that's produced by photosynthesis, but most importantly, it is an energy source. That's where the plant, you know, inverted commas, are getting their, it's their food, and that's coming from photosynthesis. Now, as a waste product for the plant is oxygen. Now, oxygen is pretty important for animals like me and you. I'm assuming you're an animal if you're watching this video. But in terms of photosynthesis, oxygen is a waste product. Pretty crazy. So that's the equation that you need to know. You might be asked to write that equation. So that's super important. You know that. Now, you might notice over here that I didn't write out carbon dioxide. I put CO2. I didn't write out water. I put H2O. You need to be able to recognize this equation, the chemical equation for photosynthesis. Now, when you need to be able to recognize it, that's different from saying you need to be able to write it. You do not need to write this out. You do not need to remember, especially that bit. You don't need to remember how many carbons and hydrogens or oxygens there are. But you might have to recognize in a diagram like this, for example, what's going on there. So yeah, that's the first one. my first video on photosynthesis, where we've looked at the equation and tried to link it to bits of plant structure from the last topic. Next, we're going to look at what can affect the rates of photosynthesis, so that'll be the next part.